Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Debrief podcast after a couple months hiatus. I'm joined here, as always, with the 97th Air Mobility Wing Command Team, Colonel Baker and Chief Flores. And we have a very special guest this afternoon. We've got Lieutenant Colonel Teddy Boyd, our 56th ARS commander. How are you doing, sir?
All right, thank you. Doing great. I don't know about very special, but adequate is what I should.
Adequately special.
Yeah. But command team, we've had a couple months off the debrief. What have you guys been up to? What have you been up to lately?
Well, it's been a couple months because it's been incredible around the air patch. We've been so busy doing so many great things. The first thing that comes to mind is we closed out our training year, which is aligned to the fiscal year. So at the end of September, we closed out our training year, and we hit a 15-year high water mark for the number of students trained. We graduated 2,031 students this year, which, again, was the first time we crested 2,000 since 15 years ago. And we're really proud of the team's collective efforts. When we talk about the number of students graduated, what I always say is it's not about the number, which is important because it demonstrates the magnitude, but every one of those students is combat power in the hands of field commanders. And as we know, with Ukraine going on right now, with our pacing challenge in the Pacific, we've got to keep generating and getting folks out the door and back into the field commander's hands. So that's exactly what we're doing. Super proud of the team, and they did it safely. They did it with excellence, and we're really proud. Chief, what have you been seeing around the air patch?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I see right now is a different coffee cup for Herman Jantz. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, right.
So that hiatus is different.
Keeping the Minnesota theme going, but I had my to-go mug after lunch today. I needed an extra cup of tea this afternoon, so.
That's awesome. Yes, sir. So, one thing that really stood out to me since the last time we filmed, one, we have a new vice, Colonel Patrick Brady Lee, an Altus native. He just came to us from the Pentagon. He's been crushing it. The other thing is that we had an air show recently.
Oh, yeah.
First one in 5 years. Amazing acts. And I think the most impressive part, and really it shows how much you trusted the team for requirements of getting things done, was that we executed on October 1st, which is always can be a minefield, but the fact that we did that day showed how much trust and confidence you had in the team to execute.
You mean with the changeover, the monies and all
yeah,
that?
fiscal year closeout can bring some concerns, but that was no problem to our team, and they executed marvelously, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we had about 15,000 people that showed up on the air patch for that. It was a wonderful day. And again, open the gates to the community, demonstrate where the good use of the taxpayers' dollar goes, and just demonstrate air power for our community and connect. It was amazing. I agree. And yeah, having Colonel Brady Lee on deck has been fantastic. The community obviously loves him. We love having him here, and it's been great. Hit the ground running. It's been busy. Yeah. Is that pretty good rundown? That's 2 months.
Yes, sir.
And now we got Colonel Boyd. We got
Boyd.
Teddy.
What have you been up to lately?
Oh boy, the slew of TDYs lately, but it depends on how far back you want to go. Banner year FY22 for the Mad Hatters. We did a lot of really impressive things. I think right now we have more students on the fly than we ever had, and I think at one point last week we had as many as the 54th, which is small but mighty upstairs, and we're just cruising along. And so returned from Weapons System Council last week and got some really great reviews from the wing commanders, the other squadron commanders. Everybody's very excited about what we're up to TDL, Tactical Data Link wise. And so when I told them that we were routinely on the Beyond Line of Sight system almost every flight, it blew some minds. And so I think Altus is really well positioned to, sir, as you said, deliver value back for the enterprise and put warfighters in AMC's hands. And so I think Altus is leading the way in a lot of aspects 46-wise. So huge shout out to the team.
I agree. The 56 Air Refueling Squadron that Teddy commands here with our KC-46, newest air refueling platform in the Air Force, it's really maturing. It's come a long way in a relatively short time here at Altus and across the board. You've got your first full pilot initial qual classes and boom initial qual classes. It's a milestone for the program. And then, Chief and I have both seen at every turn the Hatters are out there on the leading edge, getting folks ready to get to the field and to project combat power. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. Yeah. So again, that's a 2-month snapshot. We could probably go on and on, but we want to hear from Teddy here, and we want to hear from you. What have you been up to, Airman Jansen, in those 2 months?
I've been covering all those events. The air show was an absolute success for the PA team. We got a lot of great products out of it, photos, videos, news. In that time, we've also had some very important generals visit us, as well as secretaries and DVs in general. We've had a lot of very important visits, and to showcase our mission to those individuals. But yeah, it's been really busy.
Who would you say was the most important visitor since the last time we filmed?
Be careful. I'm just kidding. Answer honestly.
To you specifically.
I don't know. I honestly, no offense to the generals, but that air show and having all of those outside organizations, all those outside personnel come and for us to show off all of our air power and everything we can put on, I think it just shows how much of a premier installation we are at the 97th Air Mobility Wing, And I thought that was really important. That really
Jans, I feel like I was throwing you a softball there. We went to your promotion ceremony.
Oh my God!
Your mama was there.
Mom was here.
You swung and missed, man.
Was that with it? Yeah, it might have been within the past 2 months. Sorry, Mom.
But I love how much you love the Air Force.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
But yeah, so just so our listeners can hear, within the past couple months, I did sew on my senior airman patch, and my mother made the trip out. Which to my surprise, too. Thanks to my superintendent, too, who plotted it all behind my back.
He's back there in the shadows right now.
Oh yeah, he's chuckling, and it was a great surprise, and it was a great moment for me. Yeah, for me personally. So
well, congrats.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. But gentlemen, if we want to get into the meat and potatoes here,
We do.
do it.
We want to hear from Teddy Boyd.
Yeah,
Lieutenant Colonel Boyd.
Colonel Boyd, I'm gonna throw a hard fastball at you right away. Tell me, give me a little bit of your background and your childhood and what growing up was like in the Boyd family.
Fastball, man, that's a softball.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna knife hand me with something
No,
really
no.
contentious.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I'm giving a keynote address at the Jackson County Health Department Symposium on Thursday, and I was talking about some life story, life lessons this morning as I was writing out my speech, and it was really interesting. My entire life characterized by wanting to join the Air Force. I wrote the Air Force Academy a letter in the 5th grade and told them that I'd like to attend.
Wow.
They wrote me back and said, "Why don't you let us know when you can drive?" But it's interesting because my whole life became about attending the Air Force Academy. Everything that I did was either a zero sum, is it helping me get there or not helping me get there. And so I think kind of the first character trait is I was driven to do something. And so from the Air Force Academy, I was not the cadet and the student that I wanted to be. And so that's part of my personal testimony, is helping people understand that regardless of who you are or where you came from, you have the chance in your career to just turn around, be whoever you want. And even base to base, right? You carry a certain amount of reputation with you, but you always have the chance to start over. And I think that's one of the blessings of the military career. The second part is I was a C-17 pilot at Charleston for a very long time. First met you, Colonel Baker, and Colonel Brady Lee, sitting up there as the wing exec. And so I know you guys were in the 16th, and I was in the better squadron in the 15th.
Oh, shots fired.
And that was a really outstanding experience for me. I was there for 6.5 years. I was a special operations C-17 evaluator pilot, and just all of my dreams kind of came true. And I had this moment where I sat and I realized that my entire life had become about going to the Air Force Academy, going to pilot training, becoming a Sol 2 pilot, and then eventually I was walking down the street of Charleston towards the sim building, and I was like, hey, this is the first time in 20-something years like I have achieved. And it was really interesting because from there my life became less about flying and more about leading people. Once you kind of reach the towards the top of the technical expertise and you get the taste of making a difference in somebody's life, that either you go all in on that or you go all out. And we've seen people who do not want to be supervisors, do not want to be leaders, and that's okay. Not everybody should be. But my life became about that. I was the AFB flight commander at Charleston. It was Teddy and 64 civilian and airmen, and that was a wild ride. From there, I did the Phoenix Mobility Program out to Hickam, and I was part of the en route structure as part of the AMC's contingency response sort of exposure program and leadership development. From there, I was selected to go be the military aide to the president, and I served 2.5 years at the White House, doing what most people call carrying the nuclear football, but there's so much else, so much more than that. From there, I thought I'd take a break and go to Johns Hopkins University because I thought it would be nice and easy going to school 2 or 3 days a week. It was not, but it was a life-changing education where I got to learn from some of the smartest people in the entire world in strategic studies. We read 1,000 pages a week and just crunched through academics, and so. From there, came out to Altus and was blessed to work for my best friend in the Air Force, Keaton Askew, at the OSS to be his DO. Highly recommend to anybody if you get the chance to work for a very good friend or work with. It is an experience unlike any other in life. And from the OSS, I got the opportunity to be in charge of a task force called the FTU Next Task Force, and I was charged with figuring out how the brain works, applying that to the adult learning and aviation context, maximizing it through a full course of transformational technologies, and doing that in 6 months to completely rebuild the C-17 syllabus. And the previous wing commander said, it's this. I need you to put the effort into it that is going to the moon and the Manhattan Project all wrapped into one. And so in my testimony that I'm given as on Thursday, it's don't do what Teddy did, which is trade your personal health for success in sort of the work environment. And so I think I've been trading on that for a long time and trying very hard to realign my life into something that's resilient and sustainable. But June 16th, 2021, got the opportunity of a lifetime and take command of the 56 ARS Mad Hatters, and it has been a fast, incredible, fulfilling, outstanding journey with this squadron. It is hard to describe squadron command. The highs, the lows, the long days that are also very short. It's very interesting, and so it's been an awesome journey.
So as a commander, do you this is a bit of a rhetorical question, but do you feel like the pay on the outside looking in compensate for what you're actually asked to do?
Chief, that's a fun question. I think we are paid very well for what we do in the military. I will say, especially talking to some of my peers on the maintenance side, they don't have that equivalent pay structure, and I don't think we pay those guys enough for what they deal with, especially on the maintenance side. But I am very blessed to be here, and I took the long commitment. So I'm here. I'm here to make a difference, and regardless of what the pay looks like.
Yes, sir. So I guess that kind of led on to what would you say? You say long days, a lot of work, a lot of ups and downs. What makes it worth it every single day to be a squadron commander in your world?
Boy, applying leadership at that level is really interesting, especially for somebody who likes to look at the academic side and see how it plays out in real life. And making a difference in people's life has always been what it's about. For me, if you can make a difference in one person's life, it's worth it. And then you can stack those wins on top of each other. But more than that is the organizational change that we've seen in the 56th. It has gone through several inflection points, and I happened to take over right at the time the mission was increasing exponentially, and a lot of different challenges were coming to head. And so it's been a really fantastic experience to try and lead people through that, trust and inspire, and help them achieve more than they thought was possible. And so it's really cool to see that come to fruition. In fact, that's one of the things that I talked to you about at the I've spoken at a few of the courses, the SEL course, most recently the ALA course, and I told them that you can read the books and you can learn the theories, but it takes a lot of courage to actually follow the recommendations of Trust and Inspire, because it is so much easier to go full control. Say, you will do this, because it takes immediate effect, and in the military we have a top-down structure, and they more or less have to comply. It takes a lot of faith to help somebody, to inspire them, to lead them transformationally and coach them along, because it's a lot slower and it's not the pace that any of us want to achieve, but it is more sustainable and actually just makes your heart smile when it all comes to fruition. So
yeah, I love it. You hit some things in your little roll up. One of the things that you hit on is this. It's been an ongoing conversation, and it ebbs and flows since I've been been around and serving and leading and particularly in the flying world. And that is, we have this conversation about fly only tracks or fly tracks versus leadership tracks, and whether, not to get in the details or go down rabbit holes on those, but what I did want to say, and where you started talking about through your journey when you realized like the technical expertise was there, kind of gone along this path, and then I decided that you decided that you wanted to lead airmen and make a difference in the team dynamic. And what I've always said when we get into those conversations about at what level do we want to lead and serve, is that the same things and the same principles that give you satisfaction as an aircraft commander or a section commander as a flight commander, those kinds of smaller scale leadership opportunities, the fulfillment that you get from that is the same fulfillment that you get from squadron, from group, from wing. And so that feeling of serving airmen and growing a team doesn't change for me. That's a universal. And that's the thing I'm always trying to get through in that conversation. I feel like I can sometimes never get the right amplitude for that to soak in. Is it's the same thing. The thing that gives a young captain aircraft commander satisfaction is the exact kind of leadership that matters in the flight, in the squadron, at the group, and at the wing and above. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up, because it gave me a little segue to talk about that. And I think the tenets are the same. I really do. So something for the audience out there as our Air Force, wrestles with that.
Yes, sir. Sir, I dabbled in writing an article about flight leadership.
Yeah.
The leadership in flight and comparing it to kind of formal leadership. And I came to a lot of the same conclusions. I equate, there's a great analogy that says that as the leader of an organization, you're basically the lead of call it a six ship, like Operation Vanguard Blitz today. Mm-hmm. And if you're at the front and you haven't told people where you're going and you're just yanking and banking all over the place, it is nearly impossible for people to keep up. And so the steadier, the more clear, the more you can have wingman consideration towards the trail end of the formation, it is. They are very similar aspects.
Absolutely. So. And when you're building the plan through your team, right? It's not all hierarchical, top-down, building it out. You're getting their input. You're giving them buy-in, right? And you're setting the plan so it can be successful, so that when you do have to go with the branch plan, that it doesn't come off the rails.
And sir, to that point, one of the main lessons I've learned in Squadron Command is it's less about the destination, more about the process. It's less about the right answer and more about how you got to the right answer, where, by nature of the experience that we've had over 17, 18, 20 years, we know what the right answer will probably look like. But if we just sit there and tell people what to do, one, they have no buy-in. Two, they don't get a chance to learn themselves. And then three, they're less likely to take ownership of that. And so it takes courage, once again, to sit back and say, I know where we should end up, but how do I help facilitate people to discover the right answer themselves?
Yeah, it's harder. It's harder. Communication is definitely harder. Then you've got to feedback, follow up. And, the thing we talk about, 'cause it's a form of empowerment. You're talking about empowerment, right? And we know that fundamentally, to empower is the right way to go, especially when we need to work through distributed control, and we're going to have our folks fight forward. But there's also a level of accountability that comes with that at the respected level of echelon. And there's also the communications that are harder, because and I think it challenges us in a lot of ways to be better as leaders and to provide more commander's intent and less do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. I think we talked about it at the ALA. I have Air Power Leadership Academy. We talked to some frontline supervisors as they look to elevate their leadership game, and I had told them that one of the absolute key tasks of leadership is delegation, because done well, it is empowering, it's inspiring, and you can really achieve a lot. And done poorly, that looks a lot like micromanagement. And so I think you draw it all the way back to kind of commander's intent. And we talked through, I've sat and thought a lot about commander's intent, and I mentioned it at the Squadron Commander Breakfast several months ago, but it comes down to the context, so why we need to do something, the purpose, why this task matters, the problem, the mission statement that is, and then the product, so what the vision looks like, because I have to be able to give people enough specifics so that neither of us are disappointed at the end, but enough room to run so they can exceed my expectations. And at the end is the process, so the left-right boundaries, talk to these people, don't talk to these people, or don't elevate past our echelon of command. And it's been really interesting. So when I delegate tasks like that, it's amazing to see what people come up with. And not once since I've been in command using this format has somebody come up with exactly what I thought was going to happen. And not once was it less awesome than what I had in my head. And so if you just give people the boundaries, it's amazing what they'll come up with.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, best analogy I use is I'm here to tell you what kind of sausage I want. How you make it is up to you. When I see it doesn't come out a certain way, then I'll give you more feedback, which is all the elements that you were talking about, sir. But that's awesome. Yeah, empowerment is huge. And I think that's how you start building future chiefs, future squadron commanders. Is when, like you said, the things that motivate us really fall into those things, that sense of empowerment, that sense of accomplishment when you got it down there, rather than someone holding your hand. And that is very important.
Absolutely. Can't understate the concept of buy-in. I mean, it is really, really powerful. And I think CSAF said it really well at ATA last year when it started talking about mission command, mission type orders, trust and inspire. And there's a certain amount of leadership acceptance and willingness to not get what you wanted out of the deal. And it's basically the concept of grace. It's like, ooh. So anytime that I get something back that doesn't quite meet my expectations, I'll look inside and say, man, how did I fail to deliver enough specifics on this? Then you can pivot that. I know both of you are astute students of leadership, and you pivot that right back towards situational leadership model, where you enter into the conversation with somebody you think they're in this quadrant of the chart, and they prove you wrong, that they're maybe not there. So you need to give them more specifics, and then more specifics if they fail to meet that, and if they aren't even meeting the minimum expectations, that's where the less coaching and more directive sort of feedback comes in. But it's all on that spectrum.
Yeah, what do they say with empowerment must come competence? So that's part of assessing a person too, is make sure that the competence is there. If not, you work towards it to make sure when you empower them, you're not setting them up for failure.
Yeah, it's kind of like the coaching idea. You don't want to put an unprepared team on the field. They should be competent in their respective positions. Otherwise, you're putting that person in a bad spot, and you're not going to accomplish your objective. So, totally agree with that. That's a good little aphorism.
Yeah, Colonel Boyd, I want to get back to kind of your personal life and personal and professional influences throughout your career. Were there people outside of the military, even before you joined, that really influenced you and shaped you? And then after you joined the military, were there individuals throughout your career that really, really shaped you and made you want to, got you to this point?
Absolutely. And if somebody gets to a spot in their career where they're like, I got here on my own, I think they really need to take a step back and do some self-examination. I'm only here as a product of the people who had the grace to coach me beforehand and give me the chance to fix my mistakes and get to where I am, and that's what you see before you. It started really young. I come from a very strong lineage of military service. So my dad was a Vietnam veteran helicopter pilot, did the crazy artillery scouting in forward helicopters. Before that, his mom was a code breaker in World War II, and his dad was a Navy, was an enlisted Navy seaman. And then my mom's dad served under Patton in World War II in the Battle of the Bulge. And so I don't know, it was just a really strong influence, and I never thought, I never had a conception that I would do anything else. So why did I want to go to the Air Force Academy in the 5th grade? Well, I knew I wanted to fly. My dad left the Army, retired from the Army, and then became an airline pilot. I knew I wanted to fly. Just something about flying just captivated me. And then I knew that I was going to go to the military. It was never even a question. So you put those two together, there's Air Force Academy, and that's how it goes. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my dad for all the lessons growing up. There are some very, very tough lessons that he afforded me, but I would not be who I am without him. After that, my very first squadron commander was then Lieutenant Colonel Johnny LaMontagne, now Lieutenant General LaMontagne, and the sky's the limit for that. Just phenomenal leader. He pulled me in to his exec as a lieutenant, and I did not want to exec, and he saw that I did something well, and he caught me in the parking lot, and I was just trying to fly and gain confidence. And he goes, "Daddy, I'm gonna have you be my next exec." Roger that, sir. Whatever you need. And then I exec for him for a year, and that was really interesting. And then after that was then Lieutenant Colonel Reba Sunkus, and now Brigadier General Sunkus. and learned so much more for her. I exec for her for I think 2 years. And then after that was Lieutenant Colonel Dave Owens, who was a former vice president, military aide. From that, it was Colonel Cassius Bentley. And so I have had just a phenomenal slate of squadron commanders growing up. I would not be where I am without those. And you pick things up from each one, and you just try and understand why they do what they do, and then try and understand how you would either do the same or do it differently. And I encourage everybody in all the classes I teach that leadership is a journey. It's an experimentation. And so you've got to be taking notes. And after every single job, I take notes. What I learned from this job. So you just kind of do some reflection. And I have a thing that I do in small circles, the 19 lessons I learned at the White House. And just, base core memories and starting to write out the ones that I've learned from Squadron Command. But, sir, as you know, there are too many lessons to learn. I have a whole sheet every single day. So if I were to do that,
make it 97 lessons.
Yeah, 97 you might have from or maybe you'll have 56.
Yeah, 56.
This one for you.
I'll run out of words.
A lot of times we'll have conversations, and I definitely say this in the front office, and I say it to squadron commanders too. If you are not growing professionally and personally every single day in command, particularly or front office and key jobs, then you're really missing something. And so I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the perspective of trying to tie those threads together and see what are the big ideas here, what are the big things that were at work, because it really is, it goes far beyond the business that we're in is not 9-to-5 business, right? This is the national defense of the United States of America, and it involves every component of our lives. And so there's so much to learn every day. It's such a rich environment out there for growth. It's just incredible. I think once you can get to a place where you can look at it through that lens, it really opens up a lot more, and the experiences. And I think I've heard you touch on this, maybe some moments where you figured out is the experience one a personal growth, or am I so driven on this path that I can't see the forest through the trees, or whatever it may be. But it's a great conversation to have, important conversations.
Sir, as you know, I go about 1,000 miles an hour, everything I do. And with that come a lot of mistakes. But my only commitment my entire life has been never to make the same mistake twice. I try very, very hard to figure out why things did not go the way that I thought they would, or the way I wanted them to, and then make sure that I don't do it again. And so I only consider it a failure. One of the best interview questions is, tell me the last time you failed, right? Or what does failure mean to you? And I only consider it a failure if I failed to learn from my mistakes.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good perspective. Well, you mentioned, Teddy, if you don't mind, Airman Jantz, if I ask one here, one little thread that I'd like to pull, and this is definitely about Teddy Boyd. In your elevator speech of your experience up until now, you mentioned at one point, you said, when I was at the academy, I wasn't the cadet I wanted to be. What did you mean? What did you mean by that? Do you mind going into a little bit of detail on that? What was the lesson there? It's got to be a life lesson.
Sir, so many lessons. I think I was ill-prepared, and I think this is not a criticism of my upbringing. I think it goes back to the kind of control versus inspiration and trust and development and coaching, right? And so I think once I didn't have the strong presence in my life telling me what to do, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I know that now, after a lot of exploration on my own personality, I really dislike somebody wasting my time. And that, it turns out, is a personal tripwire for me. And I think it's because my brain works so quickly. I want to go here. And the academy is very much about, you will do what we tell you to do when we tell you to do it. And so I had an internal rebellion against that, we'll say. And I also wasn't a very prepared student. Things came, I transferred from a city school to a very country school. I graduated with 50 people from high school, to the point where I had been doing self-study academics for many years. And then I did my senior year of high school at Kansas State University in some basic classes. And so I was ill-prepared on the academic side. I also played football my freshman year, and that was more of a job than it was a hobby. And so I think the storm of things just caused me to be completely overwhelmed and ill-prepared. And so in the rebellion and the inadequate academics and the inadequate time management, I failed on a lot of aspects. And so from there, I didn't do very well academically, but then I will tell you, I had a class called Management 303, and it was the only purpose of this class was to bend your mind. It was amazing. I don't know, break your mind if you so inclined, but I did it right before the break between sophomore and junior year. And it was, I can't even tell you, actually the only lesson that I can actually talk to you about is Colonel Kevin Davis was my instructor, and he put up a bunch of PRFs, so promotion recommendation files. And he asked us cadets to say, do you think this person got promoted or not? And it was eye-opening. We're like, yeah, of course I got promoted. They saved the world and transported 1 billion pounds of cargo. He's like, no, passed over. And it caused me to question everything that I knew about the Air Force. It was really pretty funny. And something about that summer in between my sophomore and junior year, which for my listeners, that's where you make the decision on whether you stay at the Air Force Academy or not. We call it signing on the dotted line, because from there, if you leave the academy in an unforeseen way, you now owe money back, or you serve in the enlisted ranks. And so there's a big choice in between sophomore and junior year. And I made the personal decision that not only did I want to graduate, I wanted to do well. And I wanted to bring my very low GPA up to at least a 3.0, because that is the minimum bar to get you into grad schools from there on. And so I spent the next 2 years sleeping every other night and just pulling 24-hour days every other day and studying, and brought my GPA up to 3.03, and I graduated with honors from the management department and started my career on that track. And so I failed physically as well. Went from football player, where lots of calories to burn, to bodybuilding and powerlifting, and did great. And then when I started sleeping every other night, I didn't work out. I also didn't know anything about resilience and the things we teach these days, and so I struggled with weight for a good portion of my career. And so I think what I tell people is that life in general is about learning what works for you and what doesn't work for you in sort of every aspect. And I share this testimony with every Ops Air Force class that comes through. So in between your sophomore and junior year, you have academy cadets who go visit bases. And so I make it a point to have an hour and a half with them at lunch. And I share this because what I tell them is, once you commission, you have the choice. You can be whatever officer you want, regardless of who you were at the academy. I've seen just very substandard cadets, a lot of Division I athletes that I knew become outstanding officers. And I've seen a lot of folks that were at the top end of the cadet ranks, cadet squadron commander, cadet group commander, turn out not to be really great in the active duty. And so I just encourage them to use that opportunity to make life what they want out of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't know about the sleeping every other night. I don't think...
So it's not advisable.
Would not recommend.
Would not recommend.
So you just all-nighter and then go to the next day, sleep that day at a normal time, and then all-nighter. How long did you do this?
2 years. It was not good. Well, we had the summers off, but 2 academic years. I had to get really creative because I couldn't. So my roommate would go to sleep, but I couldn't have the light on, and then I would just sit in the hallway, and then the night responsible person would come yell at me for sitting in the hallway reading a textbook, and so I had to get really creative about where I studied. But would not recommend. But I think it's been interesting to see in my life, when I get determined about something, I'll absolutely make it happen.
It sounds like that's also the thing that you've got to keep bridled in some ways, right? And so something you're still working on.
So flashback to when I said trying to realign my life to something that's more sustainable. It's been interesting. Up until this last year, I lost leave. It was 8 of the last 10 years, and I'm sure it was more than that. It was not good. And so I've been asked to do big projects everywhere I go. It's really interesting. So out of the White House, they decided that I shouldn't take my leave and that I should do a very interesting top secret project for them on national security and nuclear preparedness. And so I did that, and then brought into the F2 Next task force, and I worked transformation, I worked 16 hours a day, almost 7 days a week for 7 straight months, and then rolled right into command. And so it was not ideal. It's not ideal. So what I'll tell the mental health symposium is, don't do what Teddy did. It's a journey. It's about figuring out what works and what doesn't, and got a whole nother.
So, sir, I imagine you felt like you had to work 16-hour days, 7 days a week. What if you could do anything different to still get to the same end results without killing yourself? And maybe,
Sure.
And that's not your turn. You seem something like someone that just work and that's just life to you. But what are some things that maybe you could have done differently? Same end result, but
so I think
approach?
in that project, there's not a lot I could have done
No?
differently. When you're told it's the Manhattan Project and the space race wrapped into one, and that's the level of effort I need from a person that you love and respect, mentor over many years, I do. If somebody I respect asks me to give that level of effort, I will do it. Now, going forward, it's about where to draw those boundaries.
So how do you? So this is great, because this is now going to roll into a conversation about how do you put your team in a posture so that, the pace that you're talking about there is a pace that probably unsustainable for maybe even for you, but certainly many that will not be sustainable. So how do you get your team in a posture that is sustainable and that doesn't take it to the rev limiter and then break the machine? So how do you balance that, and what's the perspective on that as a commander now, because your team's going to key off that and it's going to set their tone and climate. So how are you working on that?
Sir, so Senior Airman Mickens asked me that at his ALS graduation, almost verbatim. And so what I told him is that, number one, you've got to be exceedingly clear with people what your expectations are. And I say it at least once a month to my command team. Hey, if I'm answering emails on Sunday, I absolutely do not expect any sort of response. I don't expect you to look at your email over the weekend. I do not expect. Please do not. What works for me in my workflow does not have to dictate your life, and I ask that it doesn't. And so it's one of those things, you can say it up front, but then if you let your expectations creep, then you've negated it. And so I make sure to reinforce that with my team. I've read a lot of research that says that that's not effective strategy, but it seems to be working pretty well as long as you mean it empathically and genuinely. The other part is some of it is setting the example, I would say. I will never ask somebody to do something, one, that I'm not willing to do, but two, I will not ask somebody to go an extra inch before I go the extra mile to fish for myself. I'm running into the wall where that is maybe not a sustainable model, but I think it demonstrated, at least for my personality, my leadership style, it demonstrated how much I cared for people. And when I did ask them for things, they took it very seriously. I walk around and kick people out of the squadron, or at least I did initially, and made sure that people knew that I wasn't doing loyalty checks. I don't care and when you're here, when you're not here. What is, you saw my command philosophy and expectations is don't be here just to be here. Go home when the job is done. As long as you're improving the unit and yourself along the way, then we're going to be square. And so I try to hold to that in everything that I do. But model the way. I've always been the 12 o'clock high sort of model for things, and it seems to be working all right.
And how's family holding up?
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I would say at the White House, we intentionally put service before family and faith and a lot of other things. I don't know that I would not do it the same way that we did. Squadron Command, we know that it's not just me who signs up for that. It's the entire family. And so what it comes down to is how do you distribute the time? Because the notion of work-life balance is completely incorrect. You will always spend more waking hours at work than you will at home doing anything else. But it's about the quality time. And so, sir, I have to ask who won the chili cook-off and tell you the reason, and this is a great segue into, I love cooking chili. Yeah. I have a fantastic chili recipe, but I take very intentional steps with my family, and my oldest, Eloise, turned 8 years old, and we got her. She struggles with confidence and some other things, and she finally wanted to go to a swim meet. So her very first swim meet was in Oklahoma City on Saturday. And so coming from a Division I sports background and sports my entire life, it has been interesting to see my girls who do not follow in that footstep. And so how do you continue to coach and encourage in the purpose of sports? And so it's fun. I see that my family is my first mission, and it's just an opportunity to create amazing leaders right there at home. But we try to pack as much quality family time in as we can. So there's a book called Total Leadership. That is the first book that I've quoted in this in an hour, right? That's amazing. Usually it's a lot more than that. Total Leadership by Stu Friedman, who's a UPenn professor, and it's how do you, if you can overlap the four circles of your life, your family, community, professional, and social, I think is the other one maybe, and get as many four-way wins as you can. And so what we did is we bought a camper. So we bought a 35-foot fifth wheel, and we use it aggressively because I didn't want to get to the point where my kids are teenagers and then I'm trying to fight my way in to spend quality time with them. I want them to think that it's normal. And so we camp a lot. We camp very aggressively. And once you can pack all of that family stuff into a 35-foot trailer and spend time outside together with limited distractions, it has been really great for our family. I will say I'm glad Command is 2 years. Yeah. This is not a model that could be sustained for a very long term, but we have found a really great rhythm. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got it in balance. What are you saying, Chip?
No, so I worked for 7 different squadron commanders, and it is the absolute crucible of leadership. It really is. It amazes me what y'all do. I mean, specifically you, sir, but squadron commanders are all in. And I mentioned the paycheck earlier, and of course you're humble enough to make sure you don't minimize other people in their pay. But I'm asking because the pay, the amount of effort y'all put in, the weight of effort y'all put in, there's no paycheck that can make up for it. But it's the little wins every day when you see that airman get it, or you help that family, or get over that finish line, that next milestone for the unit. That to me is bigger than a paycheck.
Yeah, it's team growth. It's absolutely the growth of your team, and of course, leading a team to execute the mission with excellence is incredible. But it's team growth, personal and professional growth. I think you hit on a lot of those different things. And Teddy, this comes up all the time about work-life balance, and there's a lot of different theories out there. And my thing has always been that, our Air Force, it's not binary with our Air Force and where the time can or should be spent. In other words, we say service before self, and sometimes that gets twisted and people say, oh yeah, it means you put the service before family. And what I have always boiled that down to is it means it's not about you or us or the individual. It's about the group. That is the essence to me of the service before self conversation. And when you look at our organization, we are actually designed to wrap our arms around family. Now, that where every second is spent and logged is not the conversation I'm really having. What I'm saying is that there are times when there's a lot of time logged by the member and the family, and that could be time away from the family. But the structures that we have in place to care for that family and support that family, and their ability to serve through their member at different times, it's not in opposition to each other. It is not binary. The service is designed, our Air Force is designed to wrap its arm around families. And so I think it just depends on how you look at it. And when you start looking at it through that lens, it can be really powerful to understand that, this is it's a cycle and it's a constant, and we're all rowing in this boat together. And that helps me process it, and I think it's a powerful thing. So I think you hit on so many elements of that. I appreciate you bringing that up. This has been a really good version of the debrief.
I think we knew that.
We knew this was going to be good. We were talking about this. We're like, we got.
And of course, he's humble. But when I go around the base and I talk, professional development is really big to the command chief. And when I hear the by name requests come back, Colonel Boyd's typically at the top of the list, if not at the top of the list of folks that want to come back. He's engaging. He helps people find introspection. It's pretty amazing to watch him in action.
You feel the energy. You feel the passion for what you do. That's one of your superpowers, I think. He's
so deliberate about everything. He's deliberate about every phase of his life, which is pretty amazing. We talk about that intellectual curiosity. He's at the absolute high end of that.
High end of the spectrum, for sure. And what I love, though, is I think the real beauty of the story is you found a way, Teddy, to keep it all in what I'll call relative balance, right? You found a way to channel that energy, that passion, that drive in you that makes you want to be the absolute best that you can be, but not at the necessarily not at the expense of other things that really matter to you, like family and your service and your health. So
still working on that. So I appreciate those compliments. I don't think any of them are deserved. I just see the things that I haven't done well in life, and they just motivate me to keep going. I appreciate both of you giving me the grace, because I have had, one of the things we don't talk about in here is the wing commander, group commander, squadron commander mentoring and coaching that goes on in the background. Is I've made plenty of mistakes in squadron command. It is not all sunshine and roses for sure, but I appreciate specifically the grace that you guys have given me. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And no, we're all learning. It's learning every day. Is hey, what can we all collectively do better? So. That's great. That's the element of that. So, Jan, how are we doing on time, and how are we looking for this version of the debrief?
I say we go an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you guys can afford it. I feel like we have a talent here, and why not let our listeners...
I did have one last
there you
question.
go.
There we go.
See,
Okay.
this is how it goes.
I wanted to ask you what's post-military career looking like for you? What's gonna be civilian Teddy Boyd, retired lieutenant colonel, retired possibly colonel?
If I get to retire as lieutenant colonel, I will consider it a win. There are days I believe that I will retire as a captain. That is basically how I live my life. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
This was a conversation we had in the hallway before you showed us. As you know, and you've seen me talk at all the professional development things, that is my calling in life, right? Is to glorify our maker and change the world by developing leaders with humility and love. That's what I do. And so any chance that I get the opportunity to get up and share the mistakes or the lessons learned and the things that I'm working on is a good day for me. It energizes me regardless of how long the day is or how little sleep I had. So post-military, my goal in the military is to continue serving until I'm no longer useful. I'm committed out to 24 years of service, and if that's where it ends, that's where it ends. If that's not, then that's not. So it's been an interesting road to get to all of those perspectives, and I love it. And so whatever is next is great for me. But my post-military career is to continue that life mission. And so I'm working on a philosophy called leadership physics that you've seen in a couple of the slide decks, but it's about taking I can read 200 or 300 books a year and trying to plot them around in a different framework. And so it's a concept I call leadership physics. And so I think you can plot the concept of leadership on more or less a scientific spectrum. Leadership is 100% not science, but I think some of the scientific principles apply to how you understand it. And it started with, are you a start with why kind of leader or a leadership challenge kind of leader? And I got this in my head. I was like, well, why can't I be both? They're both good. And if they're both applicable, then where do they fit into the thing we call leadership? And so I said, here's what I'm going to do. I remember exactly where I was at. I was in Hawaii in the first year I was in Hawaii. What is this, 5, 6, 7 years ago now? And I was like, it's easy. I'll take all the best leadership books, and then I'll point a little arrow and point to where they fall into the thing we call leadership. It is 5, 6, 7 years on, and I still have not finished that because it turns out it doesn't exist. And so I'm of the firm belief that the world would be a better place if we had more better leaders. And leaders would be more effective if they understood how the whole leadership thing fits together.
Absolutely.
And so by reading all of these things, they all start to congregate and aggregate around certain ideas. And my whole goal is to break leadership down in its most basic, fundamental constituent parts. And then help people understand that every book, every movie, every interaction with another person is a leadership lesson they can take and start categorizing. And I can't help but think every interaction I see in life, whether I'm picking up a pizza from Domino's and I see the poor shift manager is 19 years old yelling at his 14-year-old people, and I can't help but look at it in a military or in a leadership perspective. And so my whole goal is there's a whole set of things behind it, but a set of kids' books and everything to help grow leaders from the start so that we can make the world a better place. So that's my goal whenever that happens.
Man, sir, unless our listeners are in the 56, there's like a whole 35 number of folks out there wishing they were in the 56 to be invested in like this. I'm convinced Colonel Boyd can teach a robot the art of leadership with his approach. It's pretty amazing to watch or listen to.
It's great. I think you got a bright future. Whatever that looks like. Those energies and passions will definitely lead you in a very in a great path. That's exciting too. Sign us up. We'll be your first book purchase at the road show or whatever you do.
Appreciate that.
As long as you promise you'll give us, you're not going to charge us to autograph the. Promise us when you're out there.
No, I'll be paying you to take it off my hands. So leave me a 1-star review on Amazon whenever it gets written.
That's really neat.
So all the things you talk about. I mean, I think one of the first things to build trust is reliability, and I will say anytime I email you, or anyone else in this wing emails you, you are like quick to get. You are responsive as all can be, and that's pretty amazing. Because and I've seen the spectrum. I've seen civilians to airmen to chief reach out to you, and you deliver on that. And none of that stuff matters if you don't build reliability, with trust through reliability, and that's pretty awesome that you do that.
Appreciate that feedback, Chief. I don't always hit the mark. As you know, there are more emails than there are minutes in the day, but I try to make it count when I do. You hit the concept of trust. That is the currency of leadership. And Stephen M.R. Covey, right, the younger Covey, has the book called The Speed of Trust that just captivated me. And trust can be so many things, and he breaks it down into character and competence, right? Character is, do you believe the things the person is saying? And competence is, do you believe that they're the right person to tell you that, or they're capable of telling you that? And he breaks it down even further. And I just am captivated with trust, because when it's not there, life doesn't make sense. And so, actually, one of my message this is a sneak peek for all of you people who will be there on Thursday at Jackson County Health Department Mental Health Symposium on Thursday. It's about resilience in yourself, right? Leading yourself well, and then being a great follower, right? So helping lead your boss by being a good follower, and the last part is leading your people in a way that builds their resilience. And so I'm showing basically what it does, how you do that in the wrong way. So the kind of toxic leadership behaviors, and then how you do it in the right way. And it all comes down to trust, love, clarity, and helping people achieve more than they thought was possible.
Yeah, you hit on followership too. We don't talk enough about that. We talk a lot about leadership, as we should, right? As we should. And we should set and maintain the highest standard for our leaders. I mean, we all prescribe to that, all in on that. But we don't. I really feel like we're all followers on some level as well too. Not sure we spend enough time talking about that and what really good followership looks like. And we probably need to parse that out a little bit more. I think institutionally, we really need to spend more time talking about that, particularly in this day and age where there's just a lot of negativity in the social media space and out in cyberspace. And that can be challenging for leaders to be able to process and either overcome or to work through. So I think we could probably collectively do a lot more in that space. I'm glad you hit on that. Probably one for the next, maybe in one of these future debriefs we do, we could talk about some examples of good and bad followership.
There's
some really. We think about leadership in that I am in charge of this organization moving in this direction, and I will tell you, sir, being a squadron command made me realize that I am both a leader of an organization, but I'm a follower in my boss's organization, and I think you're absolutely right. We do not talk about it at all. We talk about followership in basically the sense of do what you're told.
Yeah, correct.
But it's so much more than that. And I started peeling back. I mean, if I was to pick one failure, and there's of the many in Squadron Command, it's followership, 100%. And so I've been, what do I do when I fail at something? I try and learn why. And so I've done a very extensive reading on followership, and it's an emerging field, and everybody's coming to the same the same realization that followership is its own thing. And unless you're the president of the United States, and even he answers to the American people in Congress, you're a follower first. And that has been a real enlightening study of research, or course of research for me. And so I think that is probably the number one leadership lesson I'm taking out of Squadron Command, which is really interesting because it's how to be a good follower.
Yes, sir, yeah. As a squadron enlisted leader, I mean, I've always been, and I proudly say this, the bridesmaid to the commander, which means I'm their ultimate follower. And I love it because you really get to see behind every toxic leader, there's usually a group of toxic followers, because anyone could tell the emperor he has no clothes on. And a lot of the times it doesn't happen. They just watch the boss burn at the stake, and at any point someone could have stopped it. And I used to brag to people, I've never had a bad boss, me, because part of it's you don't let them. You tell them, like, hey, have you thought about doing this? And if you don't say it, then you can't blame them for not doing it. So it really is a team game when it comes to that.
It absolutely is, and you know this, and this is one of the things that Colonel Boyd was hitting on there is at the squadron command, group command, wing command level, it's not a lot of go do. It really shouldn't be in that way. Or is there direction? Is there guidance? Is there moving an organization and aligning it? Absolutely. But very rarely, even in the military sense of the word, do we need a go-do? Yes, is there a time and a place for it? Absolutely. But a lot of times it is, you mentioned it earlier, Colonel Boyd mentioned it, it is, am I getting back something that meets my intent that may look a little different, that I need to be a little flexible on, that meets the intent of the organization, meets the needs of the organization, and that I need to flex. And I have no problem saying there's an element of followership in that. And it's not leading by committee, but it is absolutely a followership component of what does the team need? And that really is something that you should follow as a leader. You should be very sensitive to that. And if you're getting feedback from folks like your SELs, your chiefs, to say, hey, boss, you need to be thinking about this, or hey, this is what the team needs or what the team's feeling, that's a form of followership from the at echelon, right? From the hierarchy. So it's fascinating. We could really, I think we teed up some great stuff.
We may need a bonus episode.
If you wanted to do that in the future, I would blitz read all the things and I would come prepared. I'll throw the book recommendation out. It's called The Courageous Follower. It's written by a Georgetown University professor who spent a long time in national security enterprise, and it is fantastic. It's about how to follow with courage, but how to speak up with courage, and the four dimensions that he comes up with. It's one of those ones you have to sit down with a cup of coffee in the morning,
yes, sir,
and really chew on it. So
anyway. I see Sergeant Allen back there taking notes. So
he's playing
hashtag
he's
leadership.
Playing Angry Birds. It's okay.
Hashtag no free ads. But as our listeners can tell, we could probably go all afternoon. But unfortunately, we've got to wrap this up. But it's been an absolute top 7 episode of the Debrief podcast.
How many have there been? 7?
Yep.
Awesome. Adequate. That's all I was going for, right? That's it.
That's harsh.
That's the bar low.
You made senior airman, and
if you'd said top 8, I would have been real concerned.
But it's been a pleasure, and it's been a great episode. And I really hope our listeners take a lot from this. And Colonel Baker, Chief Flores, as always, you gentlemen just kept it flowing, and I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your time, Lieutenant Colonel Boyd. Do you have any closing comments, sir?
I just say what I always say. Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. To Airman Jantz and the PA team for putting this together. Again, this is how we learn. The purpose of the debrief, we went back to the original concept of it, which was to figure out what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and how do we fix it, to your point. Trying not to make a mistake twice, but learning from the rich experiences that are out there. So here they are, and I think you crushed it on this one.
Oh my gosh, we didn't even. Usually we throw in the word debrief to emphasize it. It was evident.
It was one big debrief.
It was omnipresent.
Yeah,
frankly. So
word of the day.
Word of the
I'm
day
on that calendar too.
Absolutely.
No, but great job, sir. I mean, as good or better than advertised. We knew you were going to kill it tonight.
Oh,
yeah. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. This has been a tremendous opportunity to sit and talk leadership with both of you. Is something that I think everybody should get the chance to do. But there's only 2 of you and so many hours in the day, so I appreciate you spending time.
Well, we're going to start not sleeping every other night.
I said do not recommend.
We are not going to do that. We're not going to do it. But
the debrief.
But thanks. It's a debrief. We'll learn from it. But thanks, Teddy. Thanks, Lieutenant Colonel Boyd.
And with that, to our listeners, that is a wrap to another episode of the Debrief podcast. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks. Out.